My name is Eliza, and for the past 2 years, I thought I was a partner. I thought I was a wife. I thought I was the one holding my family together. My life has been a carefully balanced equation. My high-stress job as a risk manager, and my secret, more stressful job as the protector of my late father's legacy. When my father died, he left our multi-million-dollar company, Crestwood Holdings, in a trust. But he also left me with a devastating secret. The company was built on a foundation of fraud, a crime he had committed to save it from ruin years ago. He made me promise to fix it, to quietly pay back the victims from the profits before it ever came to light. My husband, Liam, was the only person on earth who knew. He was my rock, my ride or die, the one person who understood the crushing weight I carried. At least, that's what I thought. That was the lie I was living. The real lie was so much darker. I came home early from a business trip, a trip I'd taken to secretly meet with one of the victims, and I found Liam in our bed, with my younger sister, Sophie, the golden child, the fragile one, the one I had been protecting too. But the affair, I soon discovered, wasn't the real betrayal. That was just the appetizer. The main course was the file I found hidden in Liam's briefcase, a detailed, step-by-step plan. It turned out Liam and Sophie had discovered my father's real secret, a secret even I didn't know. The crime wasn't my father's at all. It was my mother's. And their plan wasn't just to take the company from me by proving I was unstable. Their plan was to then blackmail my mother with the truth. Tomorrow is their wedding. They are fast-tracking their happily ever after. They think I'm shattered, broken, a grieving widow who has lost everything. They think I've run away to lick my wounds. They have no idea I'm in town. They have no idea I've RSVP'd. And they definitely have no idea what truth I'm planning to bring as my wedding gift. This isn't just a story about a breakup. This is a story about a detonation. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been the one who was underestimated, you're gonna want to see this. Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments, what's the one secret you would never forgive? My father, Richard, was a complicated man. To the outside world, he was a giant, the founder of Crestwood Holdings, a titan of the Chicago real estate scene. He was charismatic, powerful, and deeply respected. To me, he was just Dad. He was the one who taught me how to play chess, who shared my twisted sense of humor, who always saw me as his equal. I was his protege. My younger sister, Sophie, was my mother's. Where I was analytical and quiet, Sophie was a whirlwind of glitter, emotion, and drama. She was the fragile one, the artist, the one who needed constant protection and funding. My mother, Brenda, a classic, perfectly preserved socialite, saw Sophie as her second chance at the youth and glamour she felt she'd lost. I was the responsible one, the one who was, as my mother often said with a sigh, so very capable. When my father got sick, it was fast. A pancreatic cancer diagnosis that went from concerning to hospice in 6 brutal months. He died 2 years ago, but the week before he passed, he called me into his study. He was skeletal, a shadow of the powerful man he had been, but his eyes were sharp, terrified. "Liza," he'd whispered, his hand clutching mine. "I have to tell you something, a terrible secret." And then, he laid it all out. Crestwood, the empire he had built, was standing on a rotten foundation. 20 years ago, during a market crash, he'd been on the verge of bankruptcy. In a moment of desperation, he had moved money. A lot of it. He'd essentially run a shadow Ponzi scheme, using new investors' money to pay off old debts, a massive, illegal act of embezzlement to keep the company afloat until the market turned. It had worked. The company stabilized, grew into the giant it was today, but the original sin, the $20 million he had stolen from his first-round partners, was still there, buried deep in the books. "I've been paying it back," he'd choked, his voice thin as paper. "Slowly, quietly. Off books. But it's not all gone. I'm out of time." He made me promise. He made me swear. "Protect the family, Liza. Protect the name. Don't let your mother or Sophie ever know. They wouldn't understand." He put his hand on a stack of ledgers hidden in his safe. "It's all here. The real books. The list of victims. Pay them back. Fix it from the inside. You're the only one who can. You're the only one I trust." It was a staggering, terrible burden. He was my father. He was dying, and he had just confessed to being a criminal. I promised. Of course I promised. When he died, he left the company in a complex trust, the Crestwood Legacy Fund, with me as the sole executor and trustee, to be managed for the benefit of the family. My mother and Sophie were furious at the snub. They didn't understand why he had given me, the workaholic daughter, total control, while they just got massive monthly stipends. I let them believe it was a slight, a final act of favoritism. It was easier than telling them the truth. I wasn't an executor. I was a cleaner. The only person I told was my husband, Liam. I had to. Liam and I were a team. We'd been together since college. He was a brilliant, charismatic corporate lawyer, and he was my rock. When I broke down and told him the secret, he was incredible. He held me. He didn't judge my father. He just went into fix-it mode with me. "Okay," he'd said, his voice calm and steady. "Okay, we can do this. You can do this. I'll help you." And for 2 years, he had been my partner in this terrible, secret-keeping, high-stakes con. I was a risk manager by trade, and this was the ultimate risk. While I ran Crestwood by day, my real job started at night, with Liam by my side, analyzing the old ledgers, setting up discrete offshore accounts, and creating a complex 10-year plan to silently pay back the $20 million plus interest to my father's victims, without my mother, my sister, or the SEC ever finding out. The stress was crushing. I was working 80-hour weeks. I was barely sleeping. But Liam was my co-conspirator. He was the one person who knew the real me, the one who saw the weight I was carrying. Our bond, I thought, was forged in this shared secret. It was us against the world. My sister, Sophie, made the burden so much heavier. At 29, she was a professional victim, and my mother was her full-time manager. Sophie had never held a job. Her career was a string of failed ventures, all funded by the massive monthly stipend from the trust. First, it was a curated jewelry line, which meant she bought pieces on Etsy and resold them on a fancy website I'd paid to have built. When that failed, she decided she was a wellness guru, which meant she went to $500 a day yoga retreats. Her life was a performance of authenticity, all while she was, in reality, a parasite, feeding off a company she didn't understand and a sister she openly resented. "I just don't get why you're in charge," she'd whine to me over brunch, which, of course, the trust paid for. "Dad knew I was the creative one. You're just the admin. It's not fair." Dad had his reasons, Soph, I'd say, my teeth clenched, the secret of his crime burning in my throat. "Whatever," she'd pout. "Listen, Liam and I are going to Aspen for the weekend. Can you approve the transfer for the chalet? It's on the family expenses card." She adored Liam. Of course she did. Everyone did. He was the one who would listen to her endless, circular dramas. He'd mediate her feuds with my mother. He'd even helped her, using my money, invest in a friend's art gallery. He was the perfect, charming, supportive brother-in-law. My rock, my partner, the one person holding me together as I navigated the secret, shark-infested waters of my father's past. My mother, Brenda, was worse. She was a woman consumed by image. She was the grieving, dignified widow. She spent her days at charity luncheons, her evenings at galas, leveraging her new, tragic status to climb the social ladder. She, too, was furious that I, her cold, unfeeling, work-obsessed daughter, had been given control. She was constantly trying to undermine me. "Eliza, darling," she'd say at a board meeting. She and Sophie had honorary non-voting seats, a detail that infuriated them. "I really don't think your father would have approved of this new, austere budget. He was a generous man. We have a reputation to uphold." I'd look at her, my face a mask of stone. "The market is volatile, Mom. We're in a period of fiscal consolidation." Fiscal consolidation. That was the term Liam and I had invented to explain why I'd suddenly, drastically, cut their stipends. I couldn't tell them the fiscal consolidation was me, bleeding profits into a secret repayment fund to keep us all out of prison. It's just that Sophie needs a new car, Eliza," she'd insist, her voice dropping. "Her old one is, well, it's almost 2 years old. It's an embarrassment. Then she can get a job and buy one herself," I'd snap, my patience wearing thin. This would, inevitably, lead to a tearful scene. Sophie would accuse me of being jealous of her joy. My mother would accuse me of dishonoring my father's memory. Liam was always the peacemaker. He'd wrap an arm around me after these brutal meetings, steering me out of the boardroom. "Just ignore them, babe," he'd whisper, his voice a warm, reassuring rumble in my ear. "You're doing the right thing. You're saving this family. Don't let them get to you. I know the truth. I know what you're sacrificing." And I would lean into him, my co-conspirator, my partner, my rock, and I'd feel the panic recede. He was the only thing keeping me sane. The stress was unbelievable. I was essentially working 2 full-time jobs. My day job was running Crestwood, a massive, complex real estate firm. My night job was being a forensic accountant, slowly, secretly, untangling my father's $20 million fraud, paying back his victims one by one, using a complex web of offshore accounts and shell companies Liam had helped me set up. It was a perfect, elegant, and highly illegal system. I was, in essence, committing a new series of financial crimes in order to fix an old one. And Liam, my brilliant lawyer husband, had designed the entire, beautiful, untraceable structure. "It's the only way, babe," he'd said. "We have to fight fire with fire." I was a tightrope walker, balancing over a canyon of financial ruin and criminal charges, and Liam was the only person holding the rope. I trusted him with my life, with my father's legacy, with my freedom. That was my first and last mistake. The business trip to Singapore was supposed to be the final piece of the puzzle. It was the last and largest of my father's victims, a foreign investment group he had swindled. I'd spent 6 months, through my lawyer, negotiating a final $8 million settlement. It was the last payment. After this, the secret would be buried. The books would be clean. I would have finally, after 2 long, exhausting years, honored my father's promise. I would finally be free. The trip was a grueling, 72-hour whirlwind of tense meetings and complex wire transfers. I flew back to Chicago exhausted, but triumphant. I was done. I landed at O'Hare 5 hours earlier than scheduled, a rare tailwind pushing us home. I didn't call Liam to pick me up. I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to walk in that door, pop a bottle of champagne, and tell him, we did it. It's over. I took a cab to our Lincoln Park brownstone, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I let myself in the front door, the house quiet and still. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. He should have been at his office, but his car was in the driveway. I smiled. He must have taken the day off to surprise me. I dropped my bags in the foyer and walked quietly up the stairs. "Liam," I called out, a playful tone in my voice. "I'm home early." I heard a sound, a giggle, a woman's giggle, and it wasn't mine. My blood turned to ice. I stood at the top of the landing, frozen, listening. It came again, from our bedroom, a low murmur of voices, and then that same, light, familiar, unmistakable giggle. "Sophie, no, it couldn't be. She was my sister. She was at her yoga retreat. No." I moved without thinking, my body on autopilot, my mind a roaring, white, static. I pushed open our bedroom door. They were in our bed, my husband and my sister. The 2 people in the world I trusted, the 2 people I was actively protecting. They weren't even embarrassed. They just froze. Sophie, her blonde hair a mess, her eyes wide with a strange, defiant panic. And Liam, my rock, my partner. He just stared at me. He didn't cover himself. He didn't stammer an apology. His face was a mask of cold, hard calculation. You're early," he said. His voice was flat. The room tilted. I couldn't breathe. What is this?" I whispered, the words getting stuck in my throat. Sophie, my fragile sister, was the first to move. She didn't cry. She didn't hide. She stood up, wrapped my silk robe around her body, and glared at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated contempt. "What does it look like, Eliza?" she sneered, her voice dripping with a venom I had never heard before. "He loves me. He's always loved me. You were just the convenient one." "Soph, no," I stammered, looking at Liam, my mind desperately trying to find an alternate explanation. "A joke? A mistake?" "She's right, Eliza," Liam said, standing up, not even bothering to cover himself. He just stood there, my husband, naked and utterly alien to me. "It's over. I'm leaving you, for her." The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost simplifying. The shock was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stumbled back, grabbing the doorframe for support. How long?" I whispered. "A year," Sophie said, her voice full of pride, as if she'd won a prize. "Maybe more. It's so hard to keep track. We connect on a level you would never understand, Eliza. You're so cold, so wrapped up in your work, your secrets." He needed warmth. He needed me. "My work," I choked out. "My secrets? The work, the secrets. I was protecting you. I was protecting this family." Liam just laughed. A short, harsh, ugly sound. "Oh, Eliza, you're still so naive. You really thought this was about protecting the family. You really thought you were the one in charge." That's when I saw it. The look that passed between them. It wasn't just passion. It was conspiracy. This wasn't just an affair. This was a coup. "Get out," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "Both of you, get out of my house." "Oh, it's your house now, is it?" Sophie sneered, grabbing her designer handbag, one I had probably paid for. "We'll see about that." "Liam, are you coming?" "I'll be right down," he said, not looking at her. Just at me. His eyes were cold, assessing, like I was a risk he was finally mitigating. Sophie flounced out, deliberately bumping my shoulder as she passed. I was left alone in the doorway, staring at the man I thought I knew. "Liam," I pleaded, a last, desperate attempt. "Why? After everything, we were partners. You were a project, Eliza," he said, his voice flat. "A high-stress, low-return project, and I'm done with it." He pushed past me, and I was left alone in the hallway, the silence of the house roaring in my ears, the smell of their betrayal, a cheap, musky perfume I didn't own, hanging in the air. I didn't break. Not yet. I was a risk manager. I was a fixer. I went into triage mode. The emotional devastation was a howling blizzard, but I locked it in a room and turned my attention to the practical, financial damage. He was a lawyer. He was my partner in a massive, ongoing criminal enterprise, even if it was a noble one. The legal implications were staggering. He was the one who had set up the offshore accounts to pay back my father's victims. He was the one who had structured the LLCs to shield Crestwood's assets. He knew everything. He didn't just have emotional leverage over me. He had legal leverage. He could destroy me. He could send me to prison for the very fraud I was trying to fix. My first call was to my father's real lawyer, the one Lydia had pushed out. Mr. Abernathy. I told him everything. The original fraud, the secret repayment plan, the affair, the threat. He was quiet for a long time. "Eliza," he said, his voice grim, "you are in a terrible, terrible position. You've been, in the eyes of the law, committing wire fraud and money laundering, even for a good reason. Liam holds all the cards. He can expose you, and he can use that threat to take everything. So what do?" I whispered, the panic finally breaking through my cold resolve. "You fight back," he said, "but not in court. Not yet. You fight him in the company. You're the trustee. You have the power. You need to sever his access. Now." But I was too late. I tried to log into the Crestwood servers. Access denied. I tried to log into the offshore repayment accounts. Password incorrect. He had already done it. He had locked me out. He had used the 24 hours I was in shock to seize control of the entire system we had built. Then, the formal attack began. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope. Divorce papers. It was aggressive. Brutal. He wasn't just asking for a divorce. He was suing me. He was petitioning the court for an emergency injunction to have me removed as the trustee of the legacy fund, claiming that I was emotionally unstable, erratic, and a clear and present danger to the company's financial health. His proof, my irrational behavior upon discovering the affair. He was using my pain as a weapon. And then, the kill shot. He was also petitioning for 50% of all marital assets, including a retroactive 50% stake in the increase in value of Crestwood Holdings since my father's death. He was claiming that he, as my key strategic partner, aka the guy who helped me commit wire fraud, was entitled to half of the company I had just saved. He wasn't just leaving me, he was planning to rob me and leave me for dead. My mother, of course, was ecstatic. She and Sophie were a united, triumphant front. "Well, Eliza," my mother said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy when she called, "it seems you've lost everything. Your sister, your husband, and now, it seems, the company. Liam and Sophie are filing a joint motion. They believe you are unfit to manage the legacy. They're asking that Sophie, as the only other family member, be made co-trustee. It's for the best, dear. You're clearly not well." I was being outmaneuvered at every turn. They were using my own secret, my own burden, to paint me as the villain. They were going to take it all. I was trapped. I had no money. All my personal assets were tied up in the company. No power, Liam had seized the accounts, and no allies. I was alone, about to be sued into oblivion by my own husband, my own sister, and my own mother, all while trying to keep the secret of my father's $20 million crime buried. I was, in every sense of the word, screwed. I spent the next 2 weeks in a legal hell. My lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, was good, but he was drowning. Liam was brilliant. He was a shark. He filed motion after motion, burying us in paperwork, all of it painting me as the scorned wife, having a mental breakdown. He used his knowledge of our secret accounts to point to my erratic and secretive financial behavior. He was framing my attempts to fix the fraud as proof of my instability. It was a genius, horrifying move. The court had frozen the legacy fund, pending the hearing. Crestwood was paralyzed. I was running out of time, and I was running out of options. I was going to lose. I was going to lose my father's company, my home, my reputation, and I was very likely going to end up in prison. The end came, as it always does, not with a bang, but with a simple, mundane task. I was at our house, my house, for now, packing up the last of Liam's things to be sent to his lawyer. I was on my knees in our shared walk-in closet, a place that now felt like a tomb. I was numb, just going through the motions, suits, shoes, ties, and then, in the back, tucked under a pile of old gym bags, was his old, worn-in leather briefcase. It was the one he'd used when he was a junior associate, before he'd become the slick corporate shark. He hadn't used it in years. It was heavy. I figured it was just old, useless files. I almost didn't open it, but some last, dying ember of my prosecutorial instinct, made me flip the latches. It was full of files, old case files, just as I'd thought. But underneath them, tucked beneath a false bottom I had never known was there, was a slim, black, leather-bound journal, and a single encrypted USB drive. My heart stopped. It wasn't my journal. It was his private, analog, handwritten journal. My hands were shaking. This was a level of violation I had never considered. But I was a woman on the verge of annihilation. Privacy was a luxury I could no longer afford. I opened it. The first few pages were normal. Musings on his career, frustrations with his boss, sweet notes about our early marriage. And then, it changed. The change was dated almost 3 years ago, a full year before our secret-keeping partnership had even begun. A year before my father had even gotten sick. Met with Sophie again. She's electric, and so angry. She sees her sister for what she is. The golden girl, the perfect one. She's right to be jealous. Eliza, she's just so boring. I read on, my vision blurring. This wasn't a recent affair. This had been going on for years. He had been lying to me from the very beginning. Sophie's idea is insane and brilliant. She thinks the old man's company is a house of cards. She thinks Brenda, my mother, is hiding something. She wants me to get close to Eliza, to Liam, to find out. She says if we can find the leverage, we can take it all. She just wants to burn her sister to the ground. God, I love her fire. I felt the bile rise in my throat. This wasn't an affair that turned into a coup. This was a conspiracy. From the very beginning, Sophie had targeted him. She had used him as a weapon to get to me, to get to the company she felt she was owed. And then I read the entry that changed everything. It was from 2 years and 1 month ago, just after my father's diagnosis. Eliza told me. She actually told me. The old man's secret. The $20 million fraud. She just gave it to me. She's so stupidly, tragically trusting. She thinks I'm her partner. She thinks we're in this together. She has no idea she just handed me the keys to the entire kingdom. The plan with Sophie just got 1,000 times easier. We don't just have to find the leverage. Eliza just gift-wrapped it for us. He had been playing me. The supportive husband, my rock, my co-conspirator. It was all an act. He had been working with my sister the entire time. My grief, my burden, my secret. It was just a tool for them. But the final entry, from 6 months ago, was the true kill shot. Sophie and I found it. The real smoking gun. We were digging into the old LLCs, and we found the original incorporation documents for the company before Dad's crime. The original embezzlement. The timeline. It doesn't match him. It matches Brenda. The old man didn't do it. The mother did. He just took the fall for her. This is perfect. We don't just have Eliza in a trap. We have the whole family. We can get the company from Eliza, and then we can get the house and the personal assets from the mother. It's everything. We just have to time it right. Let Eliza finish cleaning up the mess, then expose her instability, take control, and then go after Brenda. It's checkmate. I just sat there, on the floor of my closet, the journal in my lap, my world completely, irrevocably shattered. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a long con, a 2-stage heist, and I had been the willing, stupid, trusting mark. But then, I looked at the USB drive. The USB drive he had hidden with his journal. If the journal held the plan, the USB held the proof. I plugged it into my laptop. It was encrypted, of course. But Liam was a creature of habit. His password for everything was always a variation of his own ego. I tried his birthday. No. I tried lawyer. No. I tried genius. And then I tried Sophie. It opened, and it was all there. Scanned copies of the real evidence. The original incorporation documents. The bank transfers from 20 years ago, signed not by my father, but by my mother. It was her. It had always been her. And Liam and Sophie had it all. They had the proof that would not only destroy my mother, but would also, by extension, prove my fraud in cleaning up her mess was based on a false premise. They had the gun, the bullets, and the fingerprints. And I now had the confession. The journal. His own, handwritten, detailed confession of their entire, sword-aided blackmail plot. He hadn't just given me the keys to the kingdom. He had given me the keys to his own jail cell. I didn't move from that closet for an hour. I just sat there, on the cold, hard floor, and let the waves of betrayal wash over me. It was so much bigger than an affair. My entire marriage, my partnership, the last 2 years of my life, it was all a meticulously crafted lie. Liam hadn't just been cheating on me. He had been using me from the start as an unwitting accomplice in a plot to destroy my entire family and take everything they had. My grief for my father was a tool. My love for my husband was a weapon. My loyalty to my family was the vulnerability they had exploited. And my sister, Sophie. This wasn't just jealousy. This was a sociopathic long-term plan to burn me to the ground, to take what she believed was hers. The fragile artist was, in fact, a ruthless, cold-blooded predator. The old Eliza would have been shattered. The old Eliza would have curled up in a ball and wept, broken by the sheer cosmic scale of the betrayal. But the woman sitting on that closet floor, the woman who had spent 2 years navigating a $20 million fraud, the woman who had just had her entire world detonated, she wasn't shattered. She was forged. The grief was gone, burned away by a pure, cold, white-hot rage that was almost clarifying. It was the same feeling I used to get in my old life, right before a major trial. The adrenaline, the focus, the absolute icy certainty. I was no longer a victim. I was a prosecutor. And I had just been handed an ironclad, slam-dunk case. What my lawyer is referring to, I said, my voice quiet but carrying through the stunned silence, is the real secret of Crestwood Holdings. The secret I have been hiding, which the petitioners have used as proof of my instability. I took the journal and the USB drive. I went to my home office. I spent the next 6 hours doing what I do best. I made copies. I backed up the USB drive to 3 separate, encrypted, off-site cloud servers. I took high-resolution photographs of every single page of Liam's journal. I cross-referenced his handwritten notes with the digital files on the drive, building a timeline. A narrative. The narrative was horrifying. The setup. Year 1. Sophie and Liam begin their affair, driven by a mutual resentment of me and a desire for the Crestwood money. The con. Year 2. My father dies. I in my grief confess the secret, his crime, to Liam. Liam and Sophie realize I am their golden goose. They encourage me to set up the complex, illegal repayment system with Liam as my lawyer, guiding my every move. He wasn't helping me. He was implicating me. He was deliberately making me the sole actor in a new, provable wire fraud scheme, all under the guise of protecting me. The discovery. Year 3. While digging for leverage, they unearthed the real truth. My mother, Brenda, was the original embezzler. My father, in his dying confession, was lying to protect her. The pivot, the present. This discovery creates their master plan. Phase 1. Betray Eliza. Expose her instability and erratic financial behavior, the very behavior he had guided, to the court. Use the affair as the trigger. Petition to have her removed as trustee of the legacy fund, and have stable, concerned, Sophie appointed. Phase 2. Once they have control of Crestwood, use the evidence of Brenda's original crime to blackmail her into signing over all her personal assets, the house, her savings, her art collection. Phase 3. Liquidate everything. Drain the company, drain the family, and disappear. It was breathtaking. It was a plan of such profound, narcissistic evil that I almost had to admire its audacity. They weren't just planning to steal from me. They were planning to use me as a weapon to steal from everyone, and then leave me to take the fall for the entire, multi-generational mess. But now, I had their entire playbook. In their arrogance, they had kept a record, and in his carelessness, he had left it behind. My phone rang. It was Mr. Abernathy, my lawyer. Eliza, he said, his voice grim. It's not good. Liam's lawyer has filed an emergency motion for your immediate removal as trustee, based on new evidence. He's claiming you've been erratic and delusional. He's attached, oh God, Eliza, he's attached your medical records, your therapy notes from after your father died. I froze. My therapy notes? How? Liam. He came with me, I whispered, the memory hitting me. After Dad died, he insisted I go to therapy. He even found the therapist. He came to the first session with me, to support me. Eliza, Mr. Abernathy said, his voice heavy. The therapist. Her name is Dr. Evelyn Hayes. She's Sophie's godmother. The entire thing had been a setup. From the very beginning. The therapist wasn't there to help me. She was there to document me. To build a case against me. To paint my profound, understandable grief as instability and delusion. The hearing is in 3 days, Mr. Abernathy said. Liam and Sophie will both be there to testify about your erratic behavior. Eliza, we need a miracle. They have a documented, medical professional-backed case that you are unfit. I looked at the black journal in my lap. I looked at the USB drive in my hand. A miracle, I said. A strange, cold smile spreading across my face. Don't worry, Mr. Abernathy. I've got one. In fact, I've got a whole stack of them. Just make sure you clear your schedule for Friday. It's going to be a long day in court. Friday morning, the courthouse. It wasn't a grand, sweeping courtroom, but a small, stuffy, wood-paneled probate court chamber. It felt small, too small for the scale of the detonation that was about to happen. My mother, Brenda, was there, sitting in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the part of the grieving widow and terrified mother, caught between her two warring daughters. Sophie and Liam sat at the plaintiff's table, looking sleek, concerned, and powerful. Sophie was in a modest, pearl-gray dress, the picture of reluctant, responsible duty. Liam was in his most expensive, trustworthy blue suit. They were a perfect, united front of lies. I sat at the defense table with Mr. Abernathy. I looked, exactly as they expected me to. I looked broken. I wore no makeup, my hair was pulled back in a messy, careless bun, and I was wearing a simple, drab dress. I looked like a woman who had been defeated. I saw the look of triumph exchanged between Liam and Sophie. They thought this was a formality. They thought they were here to rubber stamp my execution. The judge, a sharp-eyed, no-nonsense woman named Judge Maria Chen, called the hearing to order. "This is an emergency hearing," she said, her voice sharp, "on the petition of Mr. Liam Walker and Ms. Sophie Collins to have Ms. Eliza Collins removed as sole trustee of the Crestwood Legacy Fund due to claims of emotional instability and financial malfeasance." Liam's lawyer, a shark named Harrison, of course, stood up and began his argument. He painted a devastating picture. He spoke of my erratic behavior, my deep depression, following my father's death. He introduced the testimony of Dr. Evelyn Hayes, Sophie's godmother, whose sworn affidavit diagnosed me with severe delusional disorder and paranoia. He presented my discovery of the affair as the final psychotic break. "Your Honor," Harrison concluded, his voice dripping with fake sympathy, "Ms. Collins is a danger to her own family's legacy. Her partners," he gestured to Liam and Sophie, "are here today, not out of greed, but out of a desperate, painful duty. They are here to save the company, and to save Eliza from herself." My mother let out a loud, supportive sob from the front row. It was a brilliant performance. Judge Chen looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Collins," she said, "your response." Mr. Abernathy stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "my client, Ms. Collins, has been the victim of a conspiracy so profound and so malicious, it is almost unbelievable. We do not intend to respond to these fictional claims of instability. Instead, we would like to present evidence related to the true motives of the petitioners." He placed a single, black, leather-bound journal on the judge's bench. "This," he said, "is the personal, handwritten journal of the petitioner, Mr. Liam Walker. We ask that he confirm his ownership." Liam's face went white, not pale. White. He looked like he had seen a ghost. That's private. It's inadmissible," he stammered, half rising from his chair. "It was found, Your Honor," Mr. Abernathy said smoothly, "in a briefcase abandoned at the defendant's residence. It is, therefore, legally obtained evidence of a conspiracy. A conspiracy we are about to unravel." For the next hour, Mr. Abernathy, using my notes, my timeline, read from Liam's own words. He read the entry about Sophie's initial plan to get close and find leverage. He read the entry about me, in my grief, gift-wrapping my father's secret. He read the entry where Liam referred to me as his stupidly, tragically trusting project. With every word, the color drained from Sophie's face. My mother in the front row had stopped her fake sobbing and was just staring, her mouth open. "So you see, Your Honor," Mr. Abernathy said, "this concern for my client's stability is nothing more than the final, cynical act of a year-long con, planned by the petitioners to seize control of her assets. That's his journal." Sophie suddenly shrieked, pointing at Liam, her voice cracking. He lied to me. He told me he loved me. He was using me to get to Eliza's money." Liam's head snapped around to look at her. You lying bitch. This was your idea. You came to me." "Order." Judge Chen banged her gavel, her eyes glinting with a new, intense interest. "Mr. Harrison, do your clients need a moment?" But this was just the first act. "Your Honor," Mr. Abernathy continued, "the petitioner's conspiracy was not just to seize the company from my client. It was, we have learned, a two-stage plan. They had also uncovered a deeper secret, a secret they intended to use to blackmail another member of this family. He looked directly at my mother, Brenda. She flinched, as if he'd slapped her. This was my moment. I stood up. Your Honor, I would like to address the court. Judge Chen nodded. Proceed, Miss Collins, but be brief. I looked at my mother. Her face was a mask of pure, abject terror. The legacy fund my father left me was not just a company. It was a crime. I was told by my father on his deathbed that he had committed a $20 million fraud, and he had tasked me with secretly repaying it. For 2 years, that has been my erratic financial behavior. That is what Mr. Walker, I nodded at Liam, was helping me manage, and what he planned to expose. But he and my sister stumbled onto a truth that even I didn't know until 2 weeks ago. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and held it up. This drive contains my father's real files. Files that prove he was not the one who committed the original embezzlement. He didn't have the access. He didn't have the authority. He was in the hospital, dying of his first heart attack, when the bulk of the fraudulent transfers were made 20 years ago. I turned and looked at my mother, Brenda. Her entire body was shaking. There was only one other person with that level of access. The person who ran the books. The person who controlled the accounts. His wife, my mother. Objection, Harrison shouted, jumping to his feet. This is speculation, slander. It has nothing to do with this hearing. It has everything to do with it, Your Honor. Mr. Abernathy countered smoothly. Because the petitioners, Mr. Walker and Ms. Collins, knew this. They had this evidence. And their plan, as documented in Mr. Walker's journal, was to first remove my client as trustee, and then use this evidence of her mother's original crime to blackmail Mrs. Brenda Collins into signing over all her personal assets. That is the quote-quote financial malfeasance at play here, not my client's. Judge Chen's face was like granite. She looked at the plaintiffs. Mr. Walker, Ms. Collins, is this true? Did you uncover evidence of a 20-year-old crime committed by your own mother? Liam and Sophie were trapped, their own plot exposed. If they said yes, they admitted to a blackmail conspiracy. If they said no, they were lying under oath. Liam just stared at his hands. But Sophie, my fragile sister, saw her one last, desperate escape route. Yes, she cried, standing up, her eyes wild. Yes, we found it. We found out she was the one. She's the criminal. She's been lying to us our whole lives. She killed Dad. She must have. She let him die with her guilt on his conscience. She was pointing, her finger trembling, right at our mother. My mother let out a sound, a low, guttural wail of despair. It was the sound of a world ending. Your Honor, Sophie continued, the words pouring out of her now in a torrent of righteous, desperate fury. Eliza was protecting her. She was hiding it. The repayment plan wasn't to save the company. It was a cover-up, to protect our criminal mother. That is the instability we were talking about. She is an accomplice after the fact. She is unfit. It was a brilliant, twisted, horrifying move. She was throwing our mother under the bus to save herself, to paint me as a co-conspirator, and to reclaim the moral high ground. I saw Liam look at her, a flicker of genuine, terrified admiration in his eyes. Judge Chen banged her gavel. Silence. Order. She looked at the train wreck of my family, at my weeping mother, my stunned sister, my shattered ex-husband. I am placing a temporary freeze on all assets of the Crestwood Legacy Fund and the personal assets of everyone at these 2 tables, she declared. And I am ordering a full, independent forensic audit of Crestwood Holdings, dating back 25 years. This hearing is suspended. We are no longer in probate court, people. We are in a criminal investigation. The 2 months that followed were a blur of lawyers, auditors, and depositions. The Crestwood scandal, as the Chicago papers dubbed it, was front-page news. The auditors, armed with my father's meticulous secret ledgers and Liam's damning journal, tore through my family's lives like a hurricane. The truth, as it turned out, was exactly as I'd suspected. My mother, Brenda, had been the one to commit the original fraud years ago. My father had discovered it, but instead of turning her in, he'd spent the rest of his life trying to secretly clean up her mess. He had, in effect, died protecting her. Liam and Sophie had indeed stumbled upon this truth, and had been planning to use it to blackmail her. My instability was just their legal excuse to get control. It was a perfect storm of greed, lies, and betrayal, and the fallout was total. Liam, faced with overwhelming evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to blackmail, and perjury for the lies in his initial affidavit, was disbarred. He lost his license, his career, his reputation. He was ruined. The last I heard, he was working as a paralegal in a strip mall law office in another state, buried in legal fees. Sophie, my golden child sister, did not fare much better. By turning on her mother so viciously in court, she had painted herself as an opportunist. And while she wasn't charged with the initial conspiracy, the audit revealed that she had been actively embezzling from the trust fund stipend I had been paying her, filing thousands in fake educational and business expenses to my mother, who had dutifully approved every single one. She was found civilly liable for over $200,000 in fraudulent claims. Her inheritance, the one she had been so desperate to get her hands on, was wiped out, seized to pay back the very fund she had been stealing from. She is, I've heard, now working as a yoga instructor, for real this time, and living in a tiny rented studio apartment. My mother, Brenda Collins, lost the most. She was indicted for the original 20-year-old embezzlement. She pled guilty. Given her age and the time that had passed, she was spared prison, but she was sentenced to 5 years of strict probation and ordered to pay full restitution. Every asset she had, the house, the art, the jewelry, the retirement accounts, was seized and liquidated to begin repaying the victims my father had spent his life trying to protect. She lost everything. She now lives in a small, state-subsidized apartment, a ghost of the socialite she had once been. And me, the court, in a move of profound, poetic justice, appointed me the sole, permanent, and unassailable trustee of what was left of the Crestwood Legacy Fund. My name was cleared. My father's name was cleared. The instability charge was thrown out, exposed as the malicious legal tactic it was. I spent the next year doing exactly what my father had asked. I fixed it. I used the remaining company funds and the money seized from my mother to finally make the last of his victims whole. I settled the $20 million debt, officially and legally, closing the dark chapter of my family's history for good. With the fraud repaid, Crestwood Holdings was a smaller, leaner, but finally honest company. And I didn't want it. It was a monument to a life of secrets and pain. I sold it. I sold the whole damn thing, piece by piece, for a fraction of its former glory, but for enough for me to finally be free. I didn't stay in Chicago. I couldn't. The city was haunted by the ghosts of my old life. I moved, not to London, but to a place I had always dreamed of, a small, quiet town on the coast of Maine, a place that smelled of salt, pine, and peace. I used the proceeds from the sale of Crestwood and the inheritance my father had actually left me to buy a beautiful old Victorian house on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was the kind of house my mother would have adored if she hadn't been so consumed by her own greed. And in that house, I finally built my dream. I didn't become a high-powered consultant. I didn't go back to risk management. I opened a bookstore, a small, beautiful, curated bookstore called The Quiet Page. It's filled with old leather-bound books, comfortable armchairs, and the smell of fresh brewed coffee. It's my sanctuary. My life is small now, and it is quiet, and it is mine. I'm a risk manager still, I suppose, but the only risks I manage now are whether to order 2 copies of the new poetry collection or 3. I don't speak to my family. There's nothing left to say. The last I heard, Liam had tried to contact me, a rambling, pathetic email about second chances. I deleted it without reading. Sophie, I've been told, has tried to relaunch her wellness brand, but the internet never forgets, and no one is buying what she's selling. And my mother, she sends me handwritten letters sometimes, letters I don't open. They sit in a box, a reminder of a life I no longer live. My father, in the end, was a fool. He was a good man, but a weak one, and his weakness, his desire to protect a woman who didn't deserve it, had cost us all. But he had done one thing right. He had trusted me. He had trusted me to fix it. And I had. I was in my shop last week, shelving a new shipment of books, when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up. It was Mr. Abernathy, my old lawyer, his face wrinkled with a smile. He was in town on vacation. We had coffee, and we talked, not about the past, but about the future. You built a beautiful life here, Eliza, he said, looking around the cozy, sun-filled shop. I did, I said, smiling back. He would have been so proud of you, he said quietly. Not for all of see that, but for this piece. I looked out the window at the ocean, a calm, endless expanse of blue. I think so too, I said. I think, in the end, this is all he ever really wanted. Today is my wedding day. It's not a big, opulent $100,000 affair. It's small, quiet, and perfect. I'm getting married on the lawn, behind my bookstore, overlooking the ocean. The man I'm marrying is a local architect, a kind, quiet, strong man who loves books and knows nothing of my past, other than that it was complicated. There are only 30 guests, my closest friends from New York, my new, wonderful friends from Maine, Mr. Abernathy, who is walking me down the aisle. As I was getting dressed this morning, a courier arrived, a small, tattered package with no return address. Inside was a small, velvet box. My hands shook as I opened it. It was from my mother. Inside, there was no long, manipulative letter. There was just a single gold locket. It was my grandmother's, the one my mother was supposed to inherit, the one she had prized above all else. Tucked inside was a tiny folded piece of paper. I opened it. 4 words, in my mother's shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. I am so sorry. I stood there, holding the locket, the symbol of the very legacy she had fought so hard to protect, the one she had just given to me. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an ending. But it was a beginning. I closed the locket and fastened it around my neck. It felt heavy, but not in a bad way. It felt like an anchor, a reminder of the storm I had weathered. My friend knocked on the door. "You ready, Eliza?" I looked at myself in the mirror. The white dress, the locket, the ocean behind me. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a fixer. I wasn't a prosecutor. I was just happy. "I'm ready," I said, and walked out into the sunshine.